Sarah Thompson, a 45-year-old corporate lawyer, known for her sharp mind and uncompromising work ethic, begins her day like any other. She wakes up at 5:30 a.m. in her luxurious penthouse apartment, goes for a quick run in the nearby park, and returns home to prepare for another high-stakes day at her prestigious law firm. As she's getting dressed, Sarah catches a glimpse of an old photo on her dresser. A picture of her and Michael, her college sweetheart, taken 20 years ago. She allows herself a moment of nostalgia before pushing the memories aside. Michael had died in a tragic car accident shortly after that photo was taken, leaving Sarah devastated and forever changing the course of her life. At 8:45 a.m., Sarah leaves her apartment building, her mind already racing through the details of the major merger she's overseeing. She's so engrossed in mentally preparing for her 9:30 meeting that she barely notices the bustling city around her. As she hurries down the crowded sidewalk, her assistant calls with some last-minute changes to the contract. Distracted by the call, Sarah doesn't see the street vendor's cart until it's too late. She collides with it, sending a cascade of trinkets and knickknacks onto the pavement. Flustered and annoyed at herself, Sarah ends the call and begins helping the vendor gather his scattered merchandise. "I'm so sorry," she says, not really looking at the man as she picks up various items. "I wasn't paying attention. I'll compensate you for any damages." It's then that Sarah notices something that makes her heart stop. As the vendor reaches for a fallen bracelet, Sarah's eyes are drawn to his wrist. There, gleaming in the morning sunlight, is a watch she would recognize anywhere. A unique, custom-made timepiece with a distinctive blue face and intricate silver detailing around the bezel. Sarah's mind reels. This isn't just any watch. This is the watch she had specially designed and given to Michael for his 25th birthday, just weeks before his death. She remembers the joy on his face when he opened the gift, the way he had hugged her tightly and promised never to take it off. In a daze, Sarah reaches out and grabs the vendor's arm, her fingers brushing against the cool metal of the watch face. The vendor, startled by her sudden movement, tries to pull away, but Sarah's grip tightens. "Where did you get this watch?" she demands, her voice trembling with a mix of emotions, shock, confusion, and a flicker of something she dares not name. Hope. The vendor, a middle-aged man with weathered features, looks at her with a mixture of surprise and wariness. "What's it to you, lady?" he asks defensively. But Sarah barely hears him. Her mind is racing, filled with questions. How did this man come to possess Michael's watch? Could there be a connection to Michael's death? What if? No, she pushes the thought away. It's impossible, isn't it? As the busy New York street continues to buzz around them, Sarah stands frozen, her hand still gripping the vendor's arm, the watch that once belonged to her dead boyfriend glinting between them. In this moment, Sarah knows her life is about to change dramatically once again, all because of an unexpected encounter on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning. As Sarah stands frozen on the bustling sidewalk, her hand still gripping the vendor's arm, a flood of memories washes over her. The world around her fades away as she's transported back to her college days 20 years earlier. She remembers the day she met Michael in the university library. He was struggling with a particularly difficult economics problem, and she, a whiz at numbers, offered to help. Their study session turned into coffee, which turned into dinner, and before they knew it, they were inseparable. Sarah recalls their shared dreams. She wanted to be a top-tier lawyer, while Michael aspired to start his own tech company. They would stay up late, planning their future together, imagining the life they would build. The memory of their last night together hits her like a physical blow. It was Michael's 25th birthday, and she had given him the watch, the very same one now on this stranger's wrist. They had celebrated at their favorite restaurant, and Michael had hinted at a surprise of his own. "In a week," he had said with a mischievous glint in his eye, "I'll have something special to ask you." But that question was never asked. 2 days later, Sarah received the call that shattered her world. Michael had been in a car accident. By the time she reached the hospital, he was gone. In the weeks that followed, Sarah learned that Michael's body had never been recovered from the wreckage. The authorities concluded he had been thrown from the car and into the raging river beside the road. Despite extensive searches, he was never found. Sarah had clung to hope for months, unable to accept that Michael was truly gone. But as time passed, she was forced to face reality. She threw herself into her work, climbing the corporate ladder with single-minded determination, burying her grief beneath layers of ambition and success. Now, standing on this crowded street, staring at the watch she never thought she'd see again, Sarah feels the carefully constructed walls around her heart beginning to crumble. Questions she had long since abandoned come rushing back. Could there be more to Michael's disappearance than she had been led to believe? As she looks up at the bewildered street vendor, Sarah makes a silent vow. She will uncover the truth about this watch, no matter where it leads her. She owes it to Michael and to herself to finally unravel the mystery of that fateful night 20 years ago. Sarah finally releases her grip on the vendor's arm, realizing she's causing a scene. She takes a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I'm sorry," she says, her voice steadier now. "That watch, it's very important to me. Could we talk?" The vendor, a man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and deep-set brown eyes, regards her warily. "Name's Joe," he says gruffly, "and I don't know nothing about this watch being special. It's just something I picked up." As Sarah looks closer, she notices details about Joe that intrigue her. Despite his weathered appearance and shabby clothes, there's an air of intelligence in his eyes. His hands, though calloused, move with a peculiar grace as he rearranges his wares. Sensing Sarah's scrutiny, Joe becomes defensive. "Look, lady, I ain't done nothing wrong. I'm just trying to make a living here." Sarah decides to change tactics. She introduces herself and offers to buy Joe a coffee at a nearby cafe. After some hesitation, he agrees, leaving his cart with a fellow vendor. Over steaming cups of coffee, Sarah learns that Joe is more than he appears. He speaks with a vocabulary that belies his street vendor persona, and occasionally uses phrases that hint at a more educated background. When pressed about the watch, Joe's story is vague. He claims he bought it from another vendor a few months ago, attracted by its unique design. But Sarah, with her years of experience in corporate law, senses there's more to his story. As their conversation progresses, Sarah notices other inconsistencies. Joe's knowledge of the city's streets and its people is extensive, yet he seems oddly unfamiliar with basic current events. He deflects personal questions with the skill of a seasoned politician. Just as Sarah is about to confront him about these discrepancies, Joe glances at his phone and abruptly stands up. "Sorry, gotta run. Business to take care of," he says hurriedly. Before Sarah can protest, Joe is out the door and disappearing into the crowded street. She rushes after him, but by the time she exits the cafe, he's nowhere to be seen. His cart, too, has vanished from its spot on the sidewalk. Sarah is left standing alone, clutching a business card Joe had reluctantly given her, with more questions than answers. Who is this mysterious Joe, really? And what is his connection to Michael's watch? As she heads to her office, now late for her meeting, Sarah can't shake the feeling that Joe is the key to unlocking the mystery of Michael's disappearance. She's determined to find him again, no matter what it takes. Unable to focus on her work, Sarah spends the next few days obsessing over the watch and the mysterious Joe. She cancels appointments and delegates tasks, much to the surprise of her colleagues who have never seen her so distracted. Determined to find answers, Sarah starts by examining the business card Joe gave her. It's plain, with just a name, Joe Smith, and a phone number. When she calls, it goes straight to voicemail. The generic name feels like another dead end. Sarah then decides to leverage her legal resources. She contacts a private investigator she's worked with on corporate cases, asking him to track down information on both Joe and the watch. While waiting for results, Sarah dives into her own investigation. She spends hours online, searching for any information about custom watches matching Michael's. She reaches out to old friends and Michael's family, asking if they remember any details about the watch that might help identify it. A breakthrough comes when Michael's sister recalls that the watch had a secret engraving inside the case, a quote from their favorite book. Armed with this information, Sarah renews her search with vigor. Days later, the private investigator returns with surprising news. The watch, with its unique design and engraving, was recently listed in a high-end pawnshop's inventory. More shockingly, it was brought in just a week before Sarah encountered Joe. Sarah rushes to the pawn shop, her heart pounding. The owner, a well-dressed woman in her 60s, greets her cautiously. When Sarah explains her connection to the watch, the owner's demeanor changes from suspicious to sympathetic. "I remember that piece," she says, pulling out a file. "Unusual history, that one. It's been through here twice now." Sarah's breath catches. "Twice?" The owner nods, flipping through her records. "First time was about 19 years ago. Young man brought it in, said he found it by a riverbank. Second time was last month. Different fellow, older. Said he bought it at an estate sale." As Sarah processes this information, 1,000 new questions flood her mind. The watch was found by a riverbank, near where Michael's accident occurred, and now, 19 years later, it resurfaces? She leaves the pawn shop with copies of the records, her mind reeling. The truth about the watch, and possibly about Michael's fate, seems tantalizingly close, yet still shrouded in mystery. Sarah realizes that finding Joe has become more crucial than ever. He's not just a random street vendor. He's a vital link in a chain of events that spans 2 decades. With renewed determination, Sarah vows to uncover the full story behind the watch, no matter where it leads her. As Sarah delves deeper into the mystery surrounding the watch, she uncovers a complex web of lies and deceit that spans 2 decades. Her investigation leads her down a rabbit hole of conflicting information and shadowy figures. Using her legal connections, Sarah obtains the police reports from Michael's accident. To her shock, she discovers discrepancies that were overlooked at the time. The weather conditions reported don't match local meteorological records. Witness statements contain inconsistencies. Most alarmingly, the report of Michael's body being swept away by the river seems to have been based on assumptions rather than evidence. Sarah's suspicions grow when she learns that the lead investigator on Michael's case retired abruptly just months after the accident, moving to another state and seemingly vanishing from public life. As she digs further, Sarah uncovers a series of financial transactions linked to Michael's small tech startup. In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, large sums of money were moved through the company's accounts, far exceeding its normal cash flow. The transactions lead to offshore accounts that Sarah can't trace. When she reaches out to Michael's old business partner, Tom, she's met with evasiveness and barely concealed hostility. Tom insists he knows nothing about the financial irregularities and suggests that perhaps Michael had secrets he kept from everyone, even Sarah. The situation becomes more sinister when Sarah starts receiving anonymous threats. First, it's a cryptic text message warning her to let sleeping dogs lie. Then, she notices a car following her home from work. Her office is broken into, but oddly, nothing is taken. It's clearly a warning. Sarah realizes she's stirring up something dangerous, something people have worked hard to keep buried for 20 years. She begins to question everything she thought she knew about Michael and their relationship. Was he really who she thought he was? What secrets was he keeping? The web of deceit seems to touch everyone. The police, Michael's business associates, and even some of her own colleagues, who become strangely reticent when she mentions her investigation. As the danger mounts and the lies multiply, Sarah finds herself at a crossroads. Does she continue down this perilous path, risking her safety and possibly her career? Or does she walk away, leaving the truth about Michael and the watch buried in the past? With a mixture of fear and determination, Sarah makes her choice. She's come too far to turn back now. Whatever the cost, she will unravel this web of lies and uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As Sarah's investigation deepens, she realizes that the web of secrets extends beyond Michael and his business dealings. Reluctantly, she turns her scrutiny to her own family, uncovering long-buried truths that shake her to her core. Sarah's first breakthrough comes when she discovers an old, unlabeled photo album in her parents' attic. Among faded snapshots of family picnics and holidays, she finds a photo that makes her blood run cold. It shows her father, 20 years younger, shaking hands with Tom, Michael's former business partner. The familiar skyline of New York looms in the background. Confronting her father, Sarah is met with initial denials and evasions. But as she presents the evidence she's gathered, his resistance crumbles. With a heavy sigh, he begins to reveal a story that rewrites Sarah's understanding of her family history. It turns out that Sarah's father, a respected judge, had been involved in a complex legal case involving Michael's tech startup. The case had been settled out of court, with all records sealed. Sarah's father admits that he had been pressured to influence the outcome, hinting at threats made against their family. The revelations don't stop there. Sarah's mother, overhearing the confrontation, breaks down and confesses her own role in the deception. She had known about Michael's plan to fake his death and start a new life, burdened by the weight of business debts and legal troubles. Out of misguided love for her daughter, she had chosen to keep the secret, watching Sarah grieve for years rather than reveal the painful truth. As the family's secrets unravel, Sarah learns of other lies and half-truths that have shaped her life. She discovers that her college scholarship, which she had always attributed to her own merit, was actually part of a complex arrangement to keep her away from New York and any chance of stumbling upon the truth about Michael. The revelations extend to her extended family as well. An estranged uncle, it turns out, had been instrumental in helping Michael disappear. A cousin who works in banking had assisted in hiding the money trail. Each new piece of information forces Sarah to reevaluate her memories and her relationships. The family she thought she knew so well suddenly seems like a group of strangers, each carrying their own burdens of guilt and secrecy. As the full scope of the family's involvement comes to light, Sarah is torn between anger at the betrayal and a complex empathy for the impossible choices her loved ones faced. She realizes that unraveling the mystery of the watch and Michael's disappearance means not just confronting external enemies, but also grappling with the painful truths of her own family's past. With her world turned upside down, Sarah must decide how to move forward. Can she forgive her family for their deceptions? And how will these revelations affect her quest for the truth about Michael and the mysterious watch? As Sarah grapples with the shocking revelations about her family, she refocuses her attention on Joe, the mysterious street vendor. Her instincts tell her that he's more than just a random player in this complex drama. Using her legal resources and the help of her private investigator, Sarah digs deep into Joe's past. What she uncovers is a story far more intricate and surprising than she could have imagined. Joe Smith, it turns out, is not his real name. Born Joseph Morelli, he was once a rising star in the New York Police Department. His true identity begins to explain his extensive knowledge of the city and his evasive nature. Sarah learns that 20 years ago, Joe was the lead detective on a major corruption case involving high-ranking city officials and several prominent businessmen. As he got closer to uncovering the truth, he faced increasing pressure to drop the case. When he refused, things took a dark turn. One night, Joe's partner was found dead under suspicious circumstances. The official report ruled it a suicide, but Joe never believed it. He was convinced his partner was silenced because of their investigation. Fearing for his life and unable to trust anyone in the department, Joe made the drastic decision to fake his own death and disappear. He adopted the persona of a simple street vendor, hiding in plain sight while he continued to gather evidence on the corruption case. Sarah is stunned to realize that the case Joe was working on intersects with Michael's disappearance and the financial irregularities she uncovered in his company. The web of corruption seems to encompass both of their stories. As she pieces together Joe's past, Sarah also discovers his connection to the watch. Joe had been tracking it for years, believing it to be a key piece of evidence in his long-dormant investigation. When he finally located it in the pawn shop, he saw an opportunity to reignite his quest for justice. Sarah's chance encounter with Joe wasn't chance at all. He had recognized her name and orchestrated their meeting, hoping to use her resources and legal expertise to finally bring the truth to light. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah reaches out to Joe again. This time, when they meet, both cards are on the table. Joe shares the full extent of his investigation, including evidence he's gathered over 2 decades of patient waiting. Together, they realize they hold the pieces of a puzzle that could expose a massive conspiracy involving corruption at the highest levels of business and government. But bringing this information to light could put both of their lives in grave danger. As they form an uneasy alliance, Sarah and Joe must decide how to proceed. Can they trust each other fully? And are they prepared for the consequences of revealing a truth that powerful people have worked for decades to keep hidden? Armed with the truth about Joe's past and the extent of the conspiracy, Sarah decides it's time for a confrontation. She arranges a meeting with Tom, Michael's former business partner, at a bustling cafe in the heart of the city. As Sarah waits nervously, she feels the weight of a hidden microphone against her skin. Joe and a trusted private investigator are stationed nearby, ready to intervene if things go south. Tom arrives, looking older and more haggard than Sarah remembers. His eyes dart around the cafe suspiciously before he sits down. "I know everything, Tom," Sarah begins, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "About the corruption, the money laundering, Michael's fake death. I know about your involvement and the cover-up that followed." Tom's face pales, but he quickly composes himself. "You don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. You're digging into things you don't understand." But Sarah presses on, laying out the evidence piece by piece. She mentions specific dates, transactions, and names that make Tom visibly uncomfortable. As she speaks, she can see the man's composure crumbling. Finally, Tom breaks. "You don't get it, Sarah. We were in too deep. There were people, powerful people, who would have destroyed us all if we didn't play along." What follows is a flood of revelations. Tom confesses to his role in the scheme, but insists that Michael was the mastermind. He reveals that Michael is indeed alive, living under an assumed identity in South America. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when Tom admits that he's been wanting to come clean for years, but fear kept him silent. He offers to testify and provide crucial documents in exchange for leniency. As their confrontation reaches its climax, the cafe door bursts open. Joe rushes in, his face grave. "We need to go now," he says urgently. They know we're here. In a whirlwind of activity, Sarah, Tom, and Joe flee the cafe, narrowly escaping a group of menacing men in dark suits. As they race through the city streets, Sarah realizes that their actions have stirred up a hornet's nest. The confrontation has set in motion a chain of events that will change everything. With Tom now as an unlikely ally, Sarah and Joe find themselves on the precipice of exposing a scandal that will shake the city to its core. But as the danger mounts and the revelations continue to unfold, Sarah can't help but wonder, is she ready for the final truth about Michael and the life she thought she knew? As Sarah, Joe, and Tom take refuge in a safe house arranged by Joe's old police contacts, they realize that their small group isn't enough to take on the powerful forces aligned against them. They need allies, and fast. Reluctantly, Sarah reaches out to her father, the judge. Despite her anger at his past deceptions, she knows his connections could be crucial. To her surprise, her father not only agrees to help, but reveals that he's been quietly gathering evidence of corruption for years, waiting for the right moment to act. Meanwhile, Joe taps into his network of disgruntled ex-cops and honest officers still on the force. Slowly, a clandestine team begins to form, each member bringing unique skills and resources to the table. Tom, seeking redemption, reaches out to former colleagues in the business world who had been unwilling participants in the corruption. Many are eager to clear their consciences and join the cause. An unexpected ally emerges in the form of a young, idealistic journalist named Maya, who has been investigating the corruption independently. Her fresh perspective and media connections prove invaluable. As the alliance grows, so does its power. They begin to uncover more pieces of the puzzle, connecting dots that had seemed unrelated before. The full scope of the conspiracy becomes clear, implicating not just local officials, but reaching into the highest levels of state and even federal government. However, with each new ally comes new risks. Sarah and Joe must carefully vet each person, always wary of potential moles or double agents. Trust becomes both their most valuable currency and their greatest vulnerability. The group faces internal conflicts as well. Different factions argue over strategies, with some pushing for immediate exposure, while others advocate for gathering more evidence. Sarah finds herself in the role of mediator, trying to keep the fragile alliance from fracturing. As they work together, unexpected bonds form. Sarah finds herself developing a deep respect for unwavering commitment to justice. She and Maya become close friends, united by their determination to uncover the truth. Even Tom, once viewed as an enemy, becomes an integral part of the team, his insider knowledge proving crucial time and again. With their combined resources and diverse skills, the Alliance begins to make real progress. They're no longer just running and hiding, they're fighting back, methodically dismantling the corrupt system piece by piece. As they prepare for their biggest move yet, a coordinated effort to expose the entire conspiracy, Sarah realizes that this unlikely group of allies has become more than just a team. They've become a family, united in their quest for justice. But with powerful enemies closing in and the stakes higher than ever, Sarah wonders if their newfound strength will be enough to see them through the challenges ahead. As Sarah and her allies prepare to expose the conspiracy, a startling revelation turns their world upside down. An encrypted message arrives from an unknown source containing coordinates to a remote location. Cautiously, Sarah, Joe, and Maya decide to investigate. Upon reaching the specified location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, they're confronted with a sight that leaves them speechless. There, emerging from the shadows, is Michael himself. The reunion is far from joyous. Michael, his face weathered by years of hiding, explains that he's been watching their investigation unfold from afar. He reveals that the conspiracy goes even deeper than they imagined, implicating international crime syndicates and shadow government organizations. But the most shocking twist comes when Michael confesses that he wasn't just a victim of the conspiracy, he was one of its architects. His apparent death was part of an elaborate plan to protect himself when the scheme began to unravel. This revelation shatters Sarah's world once again. She's forced to confront the fact that the man she mourned, the man she loved, is not who she thought he was. The group must now grapple with this new information and decide whether Michael is a potential ally in their fight for justice or a dangerous liability. As they debate their next move, sirens wail in the distance. Someone has betrayed their location. In the chaos that follows, Michael disappears once again, leaving Sarah and her allies with more questions than answers and a fight that has suddenly become much more complicated. In the aftermath of Michael's shocking reappearance, Sarah finds herself in emotional turmoil. The betrayal cuts deep, shaking the very foundation of her past and everything she thought she knew about love and trust. As the group continues their fight against the conspiracy, Sarah grapples with her conflicting feelings. Despite Michael's deception, a part of her still cares for him, remembering the man she once loved. This internal struggle affects her decision-making and strains her relationships with Joe and the other allies. Weeks pass, and the team makes significant progress in exposing the corruption. During a particularly risky operation, Michael unexpectedly resurfaces, saving Sarah's life at great personal risk. This selfless act forces Sarah to reconsider her feelings and Michael's true motivations. In a tense, emotional confrontation, Michael fully confesses his past misdeeds. He explains how he got caught up in the conspiracy, blinded by ambition and fear. He expresses deep remorse for the pain he caused Sarah and others, revealing that his recent actions have been an attempt at redemption. Sarah, torn between anger and understanding, realizes that forgiveness is not just about absolution for Michael, but also about freeing herself from the burden of resentment. In a poignant moment, she chooses to forgive him, not for his sake, but for her own peace of mind. This act of forgiveness ripples through the group. Joe, who had been skeptical of Michael, begins to see him in a new light. The team dynamics shift as they cautiously accept Michael's offer to help bring down the remaining conspirators. As they work together, old wounds begin to heal. Sarah and Michael develop a new relationship, not romantic, but one of mutual respect and shared purpose. This reconciliation strengthens the team, bringing a new energy to their fight for justice. The process of forgiveness and reconciliation is not easy or quick. There are setbacks and moments of doubt. But as they face the final stages of their mission, Sarah realizes that by choosing forgiveness, she hasn't just reconciled with Michael, she's reconciled with her past and with herself. As the dust settles on their tumultuous journey, Sarah and her allies stand at the precipice of a new era. The conspiracy has been exposed, with key figures brought to justice. The city buzzes with the aftermath of the revelations, a mix of shock, anger, and hope for change. Sarah, now a prominent figure in the fight against corruption, finds herself at a crossroads. Her legal career has taken on new meaning, and she's offered a position as a special prosecutor to continue rooting out corruption in the system. However, she's also drawn to the idea of using her experiences to help others, considering starting a non-profit organization dedicated to government transparency and accountability. Joe, no longer hiding in the shadows, grapples with his newfound public identity. He's hailed as a hero by some, but struggles with the attention after years of anonymity. He contemplates returning to law enforcement, this time in a role that would allow him to implement systemic changes from within. Michael, seeking to make amends, uses his business acumen to establish a foundation supporting whistleblowers and investigative journalism. His relationship with Sarah, while not romantic, evolves into a partnership based on their shared commitment to justice. The team that came together to fight the conspiracy doesn't disband. Instead, they form a loose network, each member using their unique skills and positions to continue the work they started. Maya's journalistic career flourishes as she becomes a respected voice in political reporting. As they embark on these new paths, Sarah and her allies face fresh challenges. The system they fought against doesn't change overnight, and they encounter resistance and setbacks. But they're no longer fighting alone, inspired by the movement they've sparked among citizens eager for change. Sarah's personal life also enters a new chapter. She opens herself to the possibility of love again, starting a tentative relationship with a fellow advocate she met during the investigation. As the story closes, we see Sarah standing at the window of her new office, overlooking the city she helped save. The watch that started it all sits on her desk, a reminder of the journey that brought her here. She turns to face her team, old friends and new allies, gathered to plan their next move. There's still work to be done, but for the first time in years, Sarah feels a sense of true purpose and hope for the future. A new chapter has begun, not just for her, but for the city and all those who dare to stand up for what's right.